Hello dear students, welcome to the session. So today's class we shall continue with the living world part 2. So what are we going to exactly learn in today's session? Let us go ahead and look at the contents. So today we'll be learning about what exactly is taxonomy and how taxonomy, the branch which deals with the nomenclature identification, led to one more study, one more branch, which is called as systematics. And based on this, we'll be understanding how the scientist went on arranging the organisms with regard to taxonomic categories. And also we'll be learning the taxonomic hierarchy, which was further led for the systematic arrangement of any organism. Okay, so we'll be learning today all these topics in our session. So let us look into what exactly is taxonomy. So in our previous class, we all know that there are three important criteria for an organism to be a living organism to be named or to be identified and classified, which form the basis of the classification, we can say. So this process or this branch of science, branch of biology, which deals with the naming, that is nomenclature, identification, and classification of an organism is called as taxonomy. So taxonomy plays a very, very important role. So how does it play an important role? Because we know that any organism we have to identify. How do we identify it? Based on the characteristic features. So based on the characteristic features, if we have to identify them, then comes the next process, that is naming. So when we look into an organism based on the characters, we can identify and name it, which is called as nomenclature. And further, based on the nomenclature, the classification will be done. So more or less, the similarities and the dissimilarities will be taken into consideration. Then the classification of organisms will be done. So henceforth, the naming, identification, and classification, they are called as the processes or basis to taxonomy. So what are the basis to taxonomy? The basis of taxonomy or basis to taxonomy includes four important processes. So what are the four important processes? One second. It's taxonomy. So what are the four important processes? One is you're going to identify an organism. So once you identify the organism, then you're going to write the characteristic features. So the first one is identification. The second one is characterization. Okay, characterization. Once the characterization is done, then comes the next thing, that is classification. Classification. So after classification, finally the organism is named, that is nomenclature. So these are the four important processes, okay, which are also called as processes in the branch called as taxonomy. But these four processes were not sufficient for scientists or the people. They felt very boring because identification, classification, characterization, nomenclature, they went on doing for years. But they wanted some change with regard to these processes. So what did they do? They started adding certain relationship, or they started getting to know things about the classification. They started getting to know things about characterization further by comparing these organisms. So by comparing from one species to another species, or from one region to another region, they could find a lot of similarities and differences. So this branch which led to the discovery of evolutionary relationship between the organisms was called as systematics. So taxonomy, we can say that taxonomy is a branch which deals with naming, identification, and classification of organisms, whereas the systematic is further advanced science where it also deals with, along with naming, identification, and classification, it deals with evolutionary relationships. Okay. And also we understood in our previous class, father of taxonomy is Carolus Linnaeus, and his very famous for publication is Systema Naturae. So the word systematics have been derived from a Latin word which means systema. The word systema means systematic arrangement of organism. Okay, so it's been dealing with what? It is dealing with the evolutionary relationship. Now, what exactly is evolutionary relationship? So if we have to talk about the evolutionary relationship, let's look into a small example. So let's take human as an example. We know our origin, isn't it? We know our origin, how we have been, evolved, from which primates group we have evolved, isn't it? So that is how the similarities and the differences or the resemblances, what we say, is all because of the evolutionary relationship. The evolutionary relationship may be in the form of morphology, or maybe in the form of genetics, okay, or maybe in the form of the behavior. So the evolutionary relationship between two organisms help us to arrange the taxonomists in a hierarchical order. So evolutionary relationship can also be otherwise called as the phylogenetic relationship. The word phylogeny is nothing but evolutionary. Okay, phylogeny, or in other words, it is called as phylogenetic relationships. Phylogenetic relationships. So this branch of science which deals with phylogenetic relationship is known as systematics, right? So the word systematics is derived from the Latin word systematic arrangement of organism. Now, how exactly the systematic arrangement played a major role? So what was the scope of systematics? Definitely the scope of systematic was huge because it took into account the evolutionary relationship, which was much needed for any scientist or any taxonomist to easily classify these organisms. So henceforth, the classification played a very important role. And we know that classification is very much important because it will help us for arranging the organisms in a systematic way. It will not lead to any confusion, and that order has to be universally accepted. So henceforth, classification, we can say, it goes on changing with the time and again, isn't it? The ancient system of classification was different, the modern system of classification of is different. So but most widely, which has lot of merits, will be accepted as the classification system. So classification is not just a single step, it involves hierarchy of steps. So we'll look into what exactly is the hierarchy of these steps with regard to the taxonomic categories. So what is a category? How do we define a category? Category means it can also be called as rank. So each step is called as category, or it is also denoted as rank. So category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement. The category is a part of overall taxonomic arrangement, which we'll be understanding. That is called as taxonomic category. And all categories constitute taxonomic hierarchy. So if we have to say that species is a category, species is a category, this is one single step for the taxonomic hierarchy. Likewise, we have next group, that is genus. Then comes the order, family, and it goes on. Okay, so all these are going to be called as the taxonomic categories. These are called as taxonomic categories. Now, each of these taxonomic categories is the unit of classification, or it has a unit of classification. We can call them as taxon. We can call them as taxon. For example, if we have to say Mangifera, it is nothing but mango. Mangifera is the genus name, right? Mangifera is the genus name. Then genus is called as the taxonomic category, whereas Mangifera is called as taxon. So each category has a unit for the classification system, which we call it as taxon. Let us look into one more example as such. So let us take Cocos nucifera, which is nothing but coconut. So here, if you have to consider Cocos as the genus name and nucifera as the species name, genus is the category. Genus is the category which the Cocos belongs to, and species is again a category. Species is again a category. That means Cocos is a taxon, nucifera is a taxon. I hope this is clear to you. So this is called as, and this will be arranged in a hierarchical manner. Generally, it is from ascending to descending order or from descending to ascending order. Such an taxonomic arrangement of taxonomic categories constitute taxonomic hierarchy. So hierarchy is something which is systematically arranged in an orderly manner. So here we just see the hierarchy from lower to higher groups, or from lower category to higher category. So it involves hierarchy of steps, which is called as taxonomic hierarchy. Sometimes it is also referred to as Linnean hierarchy because it was given by Linnaeus. Okay, so taxonomic category can also be called as Linnean category, or taxonomic hierarchy can also be called as Linnean hierarchy because it was proposed by Coriolanus Linnaeus. Now we look into the categories one by one. So as I said you that it is starting from the ascending to descending order, from species to kingdom. So basically there are 7 important categories starting from species, genus, family, order, class, phylum, and kingdom. So these categories plays a very important role for arrangement of any organism in a systematic manner. So this branch of science which deals with the systematic arrangement of organisms, that is systematics, says the relationship between the species and genus, the genus and family, the species and family. Like that, it goes on, helping us to understand even more about the systematic arrangement with regard to evolutionary relationship. Now we'll understand one by one what is species, what are genus, what is family, what is order, class, phylum or division, and later the kingdom with some examples. And plural of taxon is taxa. Yes. So very simple, you need to remember just a formula called as KPC of GS. KPC of GS. And as I told you that it will be in an hierarchical order, in ascending order. So ascending is from smaller to the larger one, or the smaller to bigger one. So species plays a role, which is the lowest category. And then comes the genus, then comes family, then comes order, class, phylum or division, and then kingdom, which is the highest of the taxonomic category. So lowest is species, highest is kingdom. Then this hierarchical order has to be shown using the arrow mark. So from the species to the kingdom. But there is one difference with regard to the taxonomy categories for plants and for animals. The only one change which we see here is regarding the division in case of plants, whereas in case of animals, we call it as phylum. Otherwise, rest all the things are same. Species, then comes genus, then comes family, then comes order, and then class, division or phylum, and lastly, the kingdom. For plants is kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia for animals. So this is the taxonomy categories. Now we look into one by one. Starting from the species. How do we define a species? We know that species is a taxonomy category. So a group of individual organisms with fundamental similarities. So this is something which is very important. Fundamental similarities. At species level, more number of common characters will be present. More similarities will be present between the organism. And group of these individual organisms which have common characters or fundamental similarities. We can even use it as common characters. Common characters or fundamental similarities is called as species. So group of species can interbreed in a population and it plays a very important role. It is the lowest taxonomy category. So we can also say that one can distinguish one species from another species, closely related species, based on the morphological differences. When we look into an organism, based on just the external appearance, morphology is nothing but the external appearance. External appearance. Based on this external appearance, we can make out that the organism, whether it is similar or it is dissimilar, whether they are having the common characters or they are having certain differences. Let us look into an example and understand this even more better. So species, some examples are Mangifera indica, Solanum tuberosum. We all know Mangifera indica is nothing but mango. Solanum tuberosum is the scientific name of potato. Some animal examples like Panthera leo is lion, Homo sapiens is man or human being. So we need to understand here, already we know according to the biological nomenclature or binomial nomenclature that indica, tuberosum, the second word of every scientific name is called a specific epithet, right, or species name. So here indica represents the species name, tuberosum represents the species name, leo represents the species name, and sapiens represent the species name. So but is it same for all organism? It goes on differing, isn't it? So indica is different, tuberosum is different, leo is different, sapiens is different. So these are some of the typical examples if we have to consider and look into the characteristic feature of these organisms. And leo, Panthera leo, lion, and Homo sapiens, they all belong to one single group, that is Mammalia, right? Mammalia is a class which includes lion, sapiens, that is man, and few other examples. So the common characters here is the presence of mammary gland, you can say, or the fur-like hair. So at the species level, the number of common characters will be increased or will be more in number, right? And as and when we go to the higher category or higher hierarchy, the number of common characters goes on decreasing. So one more thing we have to understand here is each genus may have more than one specific epithet. So it's not that the specific epithet may be the same, but it can be having more than one. Each genus can have more than one specific epithet, which represents different organism, but having morphologically similarities. Say, for example, Panthera tigris is tiger. Panthera tigris is tiger. Panthera leo is lion. There are so many characteristic features for lion and tiger to be similar in their nature. like carnivorous can be taken as one of the important characteristic feature. So, or their patterns on the skin can be considered, or their wild nature can be considered. So, like that, the similarities are more at the species level. Likewise, we have few plant examples like Solanum nigrum. Nigrum is a species. Solanum melongena. Solanum melongena is brinjal. So, Solanum is the genus name for both nigrum and melongena. Likewise, Panthera is the genus name for both tigris and also for the lion, that is Leo. So, these are some of the examples, and we understood that species is the lowest taxonomic category. Next, let's move ahead with the genus. How do we define a genus? Genus comprises a group of related species which has more characters in common compared to species of other genera. So we can say that genera is nothing but group of species, group of aggregated, closely related species. And let us look into some of the examples. Say, for example, Solanum. So as I told you, Solanum tuberosum is for potato, and Solanum melongena is for brinjal. So it has the same genus name, that is Solanum. Solanum holds good for two important species, that is Solanum tuberosum, Solanum nigrum, Solanum melongena. So all these have the same genus, that is Solanum. Then coming to animal examples. So if we have to take the Panthera as our genus name, Panthera leo is lion. Panthera pardus is panther or leopard. It's leopard. And Panthera tigris is tiger. So for all these, the same genus holds good. And there is one more genus which we need to focus here. The genus of Panthera is different. The genus of Felis is different. Felis is nothing but cats. So Felis domestica is the name of the scientific name of the cat, the common cat, and Felis is the genus name. So likewise, the genus goes on varying, and genus is nothing but group of related species. Related species here may be Leo, Pardus, or Tigris with regard to the animal example. With regard to the plant example, it may be potato, especially the tuberosum, or melongena or nigrum, which has the same genus, that is Solanum. So this is the next hierarchy after species. Let us look into the next taxonomy category, that is family. How do we define family? We said that genus is nothing but the group which comprises of related species, but the next group, that is family, is nothing but group of related genera or genus with still less number of similarities compared to genus and species. So as I told you, as we go higher from species to the kingdom, the number of common characters or the similarities will be decreasing, right? But the number of differences or dissimilarities goes on increasing. As the higher we go, the characters reduces, similarities of the character reduces, but the differences in the character will increase. So this is something very important. Next, what is family? As I told you, it is related genera with still less number of similarities compared to genus and species. So when we talk about a family is something which is classified or characterized based on two important features in case of plant species. One is the vegetative feature, another one is the reproductive feature. So if you look into a plant may be having vegetative characters and the reproductive characters. Vegetative characters may include like the growth of the root, the growth of the stem, the branches, and the leaves. Next stage after the vegetative growth is completed, then comes the turn of reproductive growth. Reproductive growth starts from the budding of the small buds at the lateral branches or the terminal branches that may even give rise to or bloom into the flowers which are going to transform themselves into fruit, the fruit which consists of the seeds, and then the cotyledon. So all these are the reproductive features of the plant species. So when we have to distinguish a family, we'll be looking into these two types, that is these two features. One is the vegetative, another one is the reproductive features of plant species. So let us look into some of the examples now. First example is about the plant. We have discussed indeed about the Solanum group, that is Solanum melongena, Solanum tuberosum, and Solanum nigrum. Solanum and Petunia. Petunia is a flowering plant. Datura is a flowering plant. They all belong to the same family, that is Solanaceae. So Solanaceae is a family where it includes certain vegetable plants, basically even green chilies, they all belong to the same group. Okay, so potato, tomato, and then even brinjal, they all belong to the same family, that is Solanaceae. When you look at to the flowering of these organisms, these plant species, they look similar. Okay, they look similar because of the similarities which they have at their family level. This is regarding the plant families. Let's go ahead with the animal family. So when we talk about the animal family, Panthera, that is the genus Panthera, which includes lion, leo, tiger, leopard is nothing but the pardus. So they all belong to one single group, that is Panthera genus. So they are related genera with less number of similarities. And one more group is there, that is Felis genera, which belong to cats. And we have Canis, that is dogs. So the family which they belong to, especially Panthera and Felis, which have so many common characters at the family level, lion, tiger, they are all called as cat family. So the cat family which they belong to is the Felidae. Okay, and we have one more family called as dog family, that is called as Canidae. So Felidae and Canidae, they are the two important families in case of the animal kingdom. Likewise, we have so many groups of families. So if we have to talk about humans, we belong to a family called as Hominidae. Okay, we belong to a family called as Hominidae. We look into the systematic arrangement and then we'll understand about the human in the next few slides. So going ahead with the next taxonomy category, after family comes order. So what is order? Order is something which is group of related families which exhibit a few similar characters. When compared to the characters which are common in case of the family, the common character here have got reduced. The common characters have got even more reduced. So henceforth, they exhibit a few similar characters. For example, the families which include under the order is Convolvulaceae, Solanaceae, and they all belong to one single order called as polynomials. Okay, so based on the floral characters, they belong to this particular order, that is polymoniales. Okay, it should be polymonials. Just make a correction. Polymonials. So how are they classified? Based on the floral characters, the flower characters, they have been classified into the order, that is polymonials. Polymonials includes the family Convolvulaceae, Solanaceae. They all are similar in their floral characters. Maybe the appearance or the morphological appearance, they look similar. Henceforth, they are coming under one single order. For plants, if we have to take an order, if you observe, they will end with ales. They are going to end with ales. Okay, they are going to end with ales. ALES. For a family, if you have to take in case of plants, they are going to end with CAE. Even for animals, they are going to end with AE or DAE. Okay. So that is the suffix for family. This is the suffix for order. Generally, it won't be the same in case of order of animals. So let's look into the families which belong to the order Carnivora. So the family Felidae, that is cat family, the family Canidae, they belong to one single order called as Carnivora. So Carnivora is an order, but whereas in case of human, we belong to primate or primata is the order in case of human beings, right? So the order goes on changing from one group of organisms to another group of organisms. So this is regarding the order. I hope it is clear to you. So group of related genus is constituting the families. Group of related families constitute the order. Then how do we define class? Group of related orders is put together or called as the class. So group of related orders forms a category. That category is called as the class. For example, so as I told you, order Primata. Order Primata includes monkey, gorilla, and gibbons. They all belong to one single order, including humans. And the other group of order, which we just now understood, that is Carnivora, which includes the tiger, cat, and dog. The all organisms, including human, belongs to one single class called as Mammalia. So class Mammalia is basically because of the presence of mammary glands, isn't it? That is the major basis for the classification. So all these organisms which have possessed mammary glands belongs to the group called as Mammalia. So this is it regarding the class Mammalia. Likewise, in case of plants, if we have to take, you know that there are two important classes for any plants, especially the angiosperms, like dicotyledonnae, and then we have monocotyledonnae based on the number of cotyledons which they possess, especially the flowering plants. So dicotyledonnae can also be called as dicots. Monocotyledonnae can also be called as monocots. So the one which has two cotyledons, they are called as dicots. The one with single cotyledon is called as monocots. So the class monocotyledonnae and dicotyledonnae belongs to the next group, that is division. So the flowering plants which are called as angiosperms. So now we'll understand the next taxonomy category after the class, that is phylum or division. Let's go ahead with the phylum or division. So we know that group of related classes constitute the phylum or division. So as I told you, phylum is with regard to the animals. We don't use it as division, but we use it as phylum with regard to animals, and division with regard to the plants. So for example, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. All these group of related classes which are going to be belonging to fishes, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, they all belong to one single phylum called as chordata. So chordata includes the organisms which possess the notochord. Notochord is a rod-like structure which is present in all these organisms, which serves as a important characteristic feature in case of phylum Chordata. The word Chordata represents the presence of notochord. So those organisms which are possessing the notochord, they belong to the phylum called as chordate. And the one which do not possess this notochord, then they are called as non-chordates. Non-chordata. Non-chordata includes the different groups like poriferans, echinoderms, platyhelminthes, the nemathelminthes, Orthopoda, Annelida, Mollusca, Echinodermata, they all do not lower, they are also called as invertebrates. They do not possess any notochord, or they do not have any notochord along with the other important characteristic feature. Henceforth, they are grouped under non-chordata. So non-chordata is also a phylum which includes all other organisms. So phylum chordata includes fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. With regard to the plant examples, so as I told you, the flowering plants are called as angiosperms, or it is called as angiospermae. And there is one more group called as gymnospermae. So with regard to the plant classification, when we take, it starts from algae or thallophyta. We call it as division thallophyta. And then comes the division, the tracheophyta, which includes pteridophytes. And then it includes bryophytes. There is gymnospermae and angiospermae. Together we can call it as spermatophyta, because sperma means seed. Spermatophyta, that is sperma means seeds. Phyta means plant. So the plants which bear seed are called as spermatophyta. So the spermatophyta includes two groups, angiospermae and gymnospermae, which are going to be the division for the group of the class, which may be dicots or it may be monocots, especially with regard to angiospermae. So when you study plant kingdom, the third chapter, you will be understanding about angiospermae and gymnospermae. Then coming to the last category, which is the highest category of classification or Linnaean hierarchy, that is kingdom. So what exactly is kingdom? Kingdom refers to group of all related phyla. So the group of all related phyla is called as kingdom. So kingdom plays a very important role. It is the highest category of classification. And all these kingdom, phylum, everything together, it plays a very important role as the highest category, because the characters here are very less, especially the similar characters or common characters are very few. Similar characters are few, but dissimilarities are more. Dissimilarities are more. For example, we have two kingdoms on the whole, that is kingdom Plantae and kingdom Animalia. So kingdom Plantae, if we have to take, it starts from the lowest organisms to the highest organism. That is from the non-flowering to the flowering plants. So algae, gymnosperms, angiosperms, bryophyta, pteridophyta, they all constitute the kingdom Plantae. So when we go on seeing the evolutionary relationship between these organisms, the number of dissimilarities are more at the kingdom level when compared to the rest other levels. So likewise, kingdom Animalia on the whole includes the chordata, phylum chordata, and also the phylum non-chordata. So kingdom Animalia includes the phylum chordata and phylum non-chordata. So there are so many organisms, diversified organisms, which come under this group, that is kingdom Animalia. So animal kingdom, it can also be called as animal kingdom, or it can also be called as plant kingdom, or in other words, it can also be called as kingdom metaphyta, or in other words, it can be called as kingdom metazoa. Phyta represents the plant, zoa represents the animals. So it can even be called as Plantae and Animalia, or plant kingdom and animal kingdom, or in other words, it can be called as kingdom Metaphyta and Metazoa. So these are the taxonomy categories which are arranged in an hierarchical manner in the ascending order, starting from the species, then comes the genus, then comes the family, then comes the order, then comes the class, then comes phylum or division with regard to whether it is plant or whether it is animal, and then comes the kingdom. So these are the taxonomy categories which you have to remember with the formula KPC of GS. KPC of GS, which can be represented through the arrow marks from the lowest to the highest. I hope it is clear. So to remember with some examples, with some even more mnemonics, you can remember this easily. The one mnemonic which is given here is kindly put cookies on fine green saucer. So it is nothing but KPC of GS. Kindly put cookies on fine green saucer. So you can remember this using the mnemonic. In other words, it can also be remembered like this. King Philip called Ophrah for good spices. Okay, so you can remember this as in this formula or either of the above two formulas, and also you can just plainly remember this as KPC of GS. Remember phylum or division. It is phylum or division in case of the animals and in case of plant. So now we look into the hierarchy, how exactly the taxonomists use this taxonomic hierarchy to arrange the organisms in a systematic manner. The table is very important. The systematic arrangement, it is nothing but the systematic arrangement of organisms. Systematic arrangement of organisms. So systematic arrangement or taxonomy categories can be arranged in the following way. So for man, starting from the species. So man belongs to a species called as sapiens. He belongs to the genus called as Homo. He belongs to the family called as Hominidae, belongs to the order called as Primata, and he belongs to the class called as Mammalia, and the phylum, because it is animal, so you have to represent it as phylum Chordata. So this is the systematic way starting from the species to the genus. So the overall scientific name or biological name for the man is Homo sapiens. Since it is printed, it has to be in italics form, and while writing you need to underline it separately. Next, let us look into one more example of animal, that is housefly. So housefly biological name or scientific name is Musca domestica. The genus it belongs to, the species it belongs to is Domestica. The genus is Musca. The family is Mucidae. The order is Diptera. The class is Insecta. The phylum is Orthopoda. And of course, these two belong to the kingdom called as Animalia. Kingdom Animalia. Then comes the rest two plant examples. Mango. The name of mango, the scientific name of mango is Mangifera indica. Mangifera is the genus name. Indica is the species name. It belongs to a family called as Anacardiaceae, just like we saw some organisms which were having Solanaceae as an example of family. Here, Mangifera mango belongs to Anacardiaceae. It belongs to order Sapindales. You can see the ales which is going to be ending. And then class, that is Dicotyledonnae. Even here it ends with AE. Here it ends with CEAE. And then comes the division. So it belongs to the division called as Angiospermae. So this is the systematic arrangement of mango, that is Mangifera indica. Then comes the systematic arrangement of wheat. So wheat, biological name or scientific name is Triticum aestivum. Aestivum is the genus name. Triticum is the species name. It belongs to the family called as Poaceae. Most of the cereals like rice, wheat, barley, maize, jowar, they all belong to the family called as Poaceae. So henceforth, Poaceae can be called as cereal family or family of cereals. They belong to the order called as Poales and class Monocotyledonnae. Mango has two cotyledons, hence they belong to Dicotyledonnae, whereas wheat and other cereals, they belong to Monocotyledonnae, which have single cotyledon. But they are belonging to the same division because an angiospermae is nothing but the flowering plants, and these two belong to the kingdom called as kingdom Plantae. They belong to the kingdom Plantae. So this is the systematic arrangement of taxonomic categories based on the examples which have been given below. So likewise, we have to arrange them according to the ascending order. So let us look into the systematic arrangement according to ascending order now. Yes. So starting from species, the one typical example have been taken is human. This is a systematic arrangement of human being. Homo sapiens, sapien is the species, Homo is the genus, Hominidae is the family. They belong to Primata, order, class Mammalia, phylum Chordata, and kingdom Animalia. So it will be written as, you can just write it as KPC of GS and write it as kingdom Animalia, phylum Chordata, class Mammalia, order Primata, family Hominidae, genus Homo. Since I'm writing it, I'm underlining it. And sapiens. So this is the systematic arrangement in the taxonomic hierarchy in an ascending order. So I hope it is clear. Now let us solve some of the questions pertaining to this topic. First question, taxon is a unit of a group of order, taxonomy, species, genes. So we know that taxon is the unit of classification, especially which is going to represent a taxonomic hierarchy, which comprises of taxonomic category. So henceforth, we can say that taxon, as the word says, is the unit of group of taxonomy. Okay, it is the unit of group of taxonomy. Next question. The suffix phyta indicates what? Family, class, order, division. We all know that if we have to take the family as an example, Solanaceae. It is going to end with CEAE. Whereas the class Mammalia or class Dicotyledonnae, Monocotyledonnae, it doesn't end with phyta. Order, I have told you, Polymoniales, Primata in case of animals. And in case of animal, one more example can be taken, that is the Felidae, Canidae, they all belong to one single order Carnivora. But whereas in case of division with regard to the plants, they belong to division called as Angiospermae or Gymnospermae. Together we can call it as Spermatophyta, seed-bearing plants. So where they end with the suffix phyta. So henceforth, here the option is division. Here the option is division. Going ahead with the next question. As we go from kingdom to species, the number of common characters at each taxa, whether it goes on decreasing, whether it goes on increasing, remains same. There is no pattern to this. Of course, there is a pattern to this, which will be followed by all the taxonomists in order to write them in a systematic manner. But as we look into the common characters at each taxa, starting from the species to the kingdom, you know that it will go on varying. How does it go on varying? Whether it will decrease or whether it will increase. So the number of common characters at each taxa from kingdom to species have been given here. So henceforth, it will be obviously goes on increasing. So if the question was from species to kingdom, the common character would goes on decreasing, whereas from kingdom to species, the number of common characters will increase, whereas from species to kingdom, the number of common characters will decrease. Right? Next question. Arrange the following in linear hierarchy. We need to arrange them according to the formula, which you know, it is KPC of GS. KPC of GS. So here they have asked to arrange in a linear hierarchy. You know that the linear hierarchy is going to be from the species to kingdom, that is in the ascending order. So henceforth, here the option will be starting from species up to the kingdom. The option remains 4. Okay, fourth one is the correct option for the question number 4. Let's move on to the next question. The basic unit or smallest taxon of taxonomy or classification is, we know that species forms the lowest category and kingdom forms the highest category. So henceforth, the basic unit of classification is the taxon, and that taxon which is representing in the taxonomy category is nothing but species. Species is the lowest or the smallest taxon of taxonomy or in the classification. Then next question. The common characters between tomato and potato will be maximum at the level of their family, order, division, and genus. Now we know that the common characters between tomato and potato. First, let us consider tomato and potato. Tomato and potato, they belong to the same genus. Solanum is the genus name for tomato and Solanum is the genus name for potato. So what is the genus name for tomato? I mean the species name for tomato. So the species name for tomato is Lycopersicon esculentum. Okay, they belong to the same group, that is Solanaceae. Whereas in case of potato, it is Solanum tuberosum, and they both belong to the same they would belong to the same species, sorry, the same family, that is Solanaceae. So as we know that Solanaceae is a family, when we spoke about the family, we understood that the characteristic features in case of the family level, they have been categorized based on the vegetative and reproductive characters. So henceforth here the option will be family. So at family level, tomato and potato will have maximum common characters. Next one. Next question is, first step in taxonomy is what? Whether it is description of organism, identification of organism, nomenclature of organism, or classification of organism. We understood that there are 4 important processes in taxonomy, that is the characterization, that is the nomenclature, that is the identification, and lastly the classification. So out of these 4 processes which are basic to taxonomy, which is the first step in taxonomy, whether it is description of an organism, identification of an organism, nomenclature, or classification? We need to understand here is, first we have to, when we look into any organism, any X organism, we have to first identify the organism. Okay, first we need to identify the organism. Once we identify the organism, we have to go on describing the organism. Once we describe the organism, then we can name the organism, that is nomenclature. And once we name the organism, based on the characterization or based on the description which have been given, later we can group them into any taxonomic category, or we can group them, or we can classify them based on the above processes. So henceforth here the first step in taxonomy category is asked. So we can say that it is nothing but identification. Identification is the first step in taxonomy. So going ahead with the last question. Study the following table which shows different organisms with their taxonomic categories. So the common name, family, order, class, phylum, and division have been given for whatever table we studied earlier, that is man, housefly, mango, and wheat. So we need to select the correct option for A, B, C, and D. Okay, so kindly mark this as small a, B, C, D. So what is A here? Here A represents what? We know that Hominidae is a family, Primata is order, class Mammalia. The phylum with regard to this is Chordata. It belongs to the phylum Chordata. And what is B here representing? So B represents the class. The housefly belongs to which class? It belongs to Insecta, right? It belongs to Insecta. And the C here is, we have to find out the family for mango. We know that the family for mango is Anacardiaceae. So the C is Anacardiaceae. And then comes the D. Wheat belongs to the class that is Monocotyledone. Do remember, wheat is monocot, mango is dicot. So they belong to monocot. So the class will be Monocotyledone. Henceforth, among these 4 options, Chordata, Insecta, Anacardiaceae, Monocotyledone is A, B, C, and D. Henceforth, our option should be option A. Right? Yes. All right, students, we have discussed till now about the taxonomic categories and the nomenclature. So in the next class, we are going to study few more topics. Meet you in the next class. Thank you.